Right. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for spending some time with me, for selecting to be a part of this session. We're going to lock and get loaded in together. So my name is Brandon Derrick Gilbert. My family calls me Brandon, so by all means, please call me Brandon. My government name is Derrick, so if you want to look me up, it'll be under Derrick Gilbert. But please, for the time here, Derrick or Brandon is fine. Gilbert's even okay. I have great parents, Dr. Bobby and Annette Gilbert. They serve here in the city as pastors. My mother is a guidance counselor, senior professional. Dr. Gilbert, great woman. In fact, she's extremely instrumental in the work that I'm able to do today. My father showed me how to be a man. My mother showed me how to honor a woman, my queen, my wife, Demi Gilbert. We have 3 children together. Hey, BB and Bailey, the apple of my eye. That's my crew. Those are my guys. My goddaughter, Pooch, Liz, and I'm just thankful that I have a camp that I have to maintain, a camp that I have to honor, love, and respect. So let me get some particulars out the way. Love, honor, respect my boy Brian. No, God, Brian, I told you before, man, you the guy. My man, 100 grand. Never forget the times that we have together, man. Love your leadership. Love what you're doing. Standing with you always. Coming from the clouds. If you call, I'm there. That's my guy. Look him up. He's the one. Also, Dr. Fenoy, hats off to you. Great job with what you're doing with your leadership. My guy, Dr. Jesus Armas, Principal of the Year. I think he's a wonderful principal. He's an even better person. Dr. J, thank you so much for your trust, for allowing me to just kind of just spread my wings and figure things out. I love that you're able to sit down with me and you share with me, you impart what I should do, some best practices. So I don't take that for granted. So let's deep dive right into the time that we have here, because I'm on a time clock and I want to honor your time because I love, honor, and respect you. I do want you to have an open heart for what we're going to talk about for the next few moments. It's going to go by quick, but an open heart so we can really glean a lot from one another. I will put my information below so that if you want to connect with me after our session, I do want us to develop that stream of communication, because a great book says to me, and I really value this book, it says that iron sharpens iron. I believe that you're iron and I need you to sharpen me up. So whatever insight you can share with me to help me along the way, I'm going to share as much as I can with you, and we're going to continue to build and sharpen each other as we go along the way. So let's dig right into it. For the last few years, I've had the opportunity to kind of to develop this really specific groundwork where I call it the Issacharian approach to teaching Black, Brown, and African-American students. And the Issacharian approach to teaching Black, Brown, and African-American students, that word Issacharian is someone's name. Issachar, it's a root word, right? So Issacharian, that's an actual person, Issachar. And let me give you a little brief history real quick about where Issachar comes from and the reason why it's so important to our work. Issachar is one of 12 brothers, right? He had a father named Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, one of which was Issachar. Now, Issachar, and I'll tell you a little bit about, Jacob and how he came about that, that whole blessing about all his sons right now, because you may remember Jacob. Jacob was a brother of Esau. You ever heard of the story of Esau and Jacob and how one brother stole the other brother's birthright? Anyways, Jacob, he stole it from his brother. Gotcha. That's this guy. He had 12 boys, right? So he had 12 boys, one of which was Issachar, and these 12 sons, they became the root of what we know as the 12 tribes of Judah, right? So 12 tribes. So Issachar, that was a tribe in itself. Fast forward, Issachar and all the descendants, they meet up with this guy named David in history. Boom, David is a warrior. He has a team of soldiers, and David was really good at what he was doing, in so much that the king that he was serving at the time didn't like him, hated him because he was so good, right? He was so good at what he was doing. The women would say, King Saul, he slayed 1,000, but David, he slayed 10,000. Anyways, everybody was going crazy and bonkers over David and what he was able to do. But see, David had a secret weapon. In his camp, he had a group of people called the sons of Issachar, right? The chiefs of Issachar. And how he described the chiefs of Issachar is that he said that those men understood the times. Those men understood. They understood people who knew the signs of the times. And why is that important to this work? It's because some theologians and some scholars, they talk about what the times or the signs, what that meant when David said that, when he described Issachar and the chiefs of Issachar, when he described them as people who just knew the times. What did he mean, right? What kind of stream of thought was he talking about? What kind of subject? What do you mean? Times of what, right? So it could lend itself to times in astrology, like knowing how to predict what's going to happen, right? And remember, the women, they were saying, King Saul, he did pretty good, but David did amazing. The reason why David did amazing is because he had people in his camp that understood the times and how to flow with the times. So was it that he knew the stars? Was it that they knew how to politically move, right? Or what was it that they knew how to religiously dissect certain ideas and thoughts about religion? Or was it even in scholarship? Whatever the premise was, whatever that subject matter was that they just knew about, they knew how to maintain and obtain critical insights in order to move strategically and what I would say effectively, right? How to move strategically and effectively. And that's what made the sons of Issachar so valuable, and which is a part of the reason why David was so successful, because he had people in his camp who knew how to flow, how to identify, and how to provide strategic insight to be beneficial and to be highly effective. So just knowing how to do it. So here we are with our theme, an Issacharian approach to understanding and how to teach Black, Brown, and African American students. Here's what we need in order to move our students to where they want them to be. There has to be a strategic plan, right? And there is, where there's data that suggests ways in which we can really move our students to be more successful, to be high impact students, right? To metacognitively move into a place where they know how to learn and they value how they learn and how to display content mastery. So I want to offer some space, right, as we move quickly through our session. I'm going to give some detailed insight, right? Some research-based, some science-based insight on what you can do as a practitioner that can really help our Black and Brown students learn and how to effectively display, multi-express their student content mastery. So just stay with me, because it's going to go by fast. It won't be long, I promise you. So let's just start with the data, right? Here's what we have for the data. Let's take a look at what the Florida Department of Education says about our Black and Brown students in reference to the standardized test. Take a look at this screen. Well, if you take a look at this screen right here, what you'll see is a state gap comparison of our white students and our African American students, right? And what it's going to display is aggregated data that's going to display the English language arts achievement. Now, we're talking about 2018, 2019, because we know that we haven't had any standardized tests because of this COVID-19 predicament that we're in, right? But when you take a look at the last identifiable year, where we kind of got some data on how our students are faring on state mandated tests, here's what it suggests. Statewide comparisons suggest that our white students are performing at a 67%, whereas our African American students, and we're talking about English language arts, we're talking about literacy development, right? They're performing at 38%. Now that's a 29% point gap. That spread is 29%. Let's take a look at another thread of the standardized assessment point, where we're looking at how our students fare in mathematics, right? So same year, mathematics, I'm looking at a 29 point spread in between our white students and our Black students. Now, this is not Derrick. This is the Florida Department of Education, and some of our practitioners here, you've seen this data before, right? It was astounding to me, right? Astonishing to me to even see this, right? So I'm looking at 2 years, two factions, right? We're talking about English language arts and then in math, and I'm seeing a trend, and I think I'm gonna see another trend. So take a look at this screen when we look at the science achievement. The science achievement, when we juxtapose and compare and contrast our white students as to their African American counterparts, our white students are performing at a 69% proficiency rate, whereas our African American students are performing at a 37% proficiency rate. And we're looking at a 32% spread in between the two. I'm seeing a trend. We're looking at between 20 and 30% consistently. Same year, different subject matters, but there's a spread, no less than 20%, right? Let's take a look at one more faction, one more point of comparison. And now we're talking about the state gap comparison when we juxtapose our white students and our African-American students, when we're talking about graduation rates, right? And this was very, very strange to me. Now, I don't deal with statistics enough to provide formidable analysis, but just using my man mind and using common sense, I'm looking at it. I'm taking a look at the data here. Graduation rates, when you compare and contrast Black students to their white counterparts, it's almost identical. It's an 8.7 spread, which means our Black and brown students are graduating on the same rate pretty much as their white counterpart, but in every standardized test category, science, social studies, math, and English, there's a 20 to 30% spread in academic performance and achievement. To me, there's something wrong with this picture. There's something wrong with this picture, and there's science-based information and insight that I want to share with you guys today as to the culprit and ways we can curtail the continuum of this underperformance of Black, brown students, right? Black and brown students. We want to curtail this underperformance. So let's take a look at the first research set that we have. And it comes from a wonderful lady who I absolutely love. I love her research. It's a strong body of research. Her name is Dr. Janice Hale. And in Dr. Janice Hale research, she really identifies what practitioners have to do in order to teach Black, brown, and African-American students, because there's a cultural implication that has to be identified. In 2001, Hale provided an article where she offers that practitioners must identify with the cultural implications of Black, brown, African-American students. And she says that some of the cultural implications for the student subset include utilizing small groups instead of large groups and adopting an instruction style that is varied, energetic, vigorous, and captivating, right? So varied, energetic, vigorous, and captivating. But she proceeds that by saying there's groups, right? Have to be small groups. It's better when it's small groups. And I know we've experienced when we had that one class that had like 32 kids, and then one day you have this slamming lesson plan and only 10 show up, and that's the best lesson plan in the world. That's the best lesson. You got so much out of it. You're like, boy, if I could just keep it under 12, right? And I understand that, because when you have time, right, when you have great space where it's a few of you all, you can really go into different avenues of learning, and the learning becomes tangible. And you can experience it as a practitioner, but your students, they get a lot from you, because now you're able to see that student for where they are. You can notice the grimace in their face if there's a point of confusion, and you can dive in and enrich and redirect, but you have space and time to do it, right? So having that opportunity to really have a small group setting will really help our Black and brown students a lot, because you will be able to see them and they'll be able to hear from you. And that's powerful, right? Because I remember going to Bethune-Cookman University, home of the Wildcats. This is where I met Dr. Edmondson Asgill and a myriad of other incredible professionals. I'll talk about him later on. But in my 100 level classes, we had a lot of people, a lot of students, right? But as I began to matriculate upward to my 400 level classes, the class sizes, they decreased. They got a lot smaller, right? And I remember one class in particular, we had 4 students, but the level of conversation, the level of dialogue, the level of research, the level of discussion that we had was palpable. And I remember it even to this day. I can feel it physiologically in my body, how intense those conversations were, because it seemed as if when we're reading the literature, my doctor was able to lift the words off of the pages, and it just splashed on our faces, and we became engulfed, right, in this learning experience, because what was on the text, we then provided space to put that text and measure as a measuring rod to our lives. And we became better people because the text is coming alive. A small group setting really works for Black and brown students. The article contends that practitioners cannot develop robust literacy components in curriculum without a firm understanding of how diverse students learn and display content mastery, right? Universal Design for UDL. And it talks about how you have to assess based on the student's ability, right? And if you do that, then and only then can you truly measure what they have mastered over time. My daughter, BB, said something not too long ago, and I was just so proud of her. I was a proud dad. A gentleman was talking one day, and the word disability came up in the conversation. And she said, "Excuse me, can we not say disability, but can we say different ability?" And I said, "Girl, like that? Did you come up with that?" "Oh no." She said, "No, Dad, that's Dar Man." I'm like, "Oh, that's right. You are a Dar Man fan." She's a Dar Man fan. In one of the episodes, it talked about being sensitive to the words we use, right? And it talked about when you see someone who has a quote unquote disability, let's look at that from a growth mindset and not say, you don't have a disability, you just have a different ability, right? You have a different ability. You're a superhero in another kind of way, and we're going to value that. We're going to see you for that prowess. We're going to see you from that value, rather than talking about what you may not have or you don't do so well. Let's identify and talk about what you do well, what you have to offer, and we'll just create space for you to multi-express that, right? So instead of having a disability, you may have a different ability. But when practitioners approach and use pedagogy that values what the student comes to class with, then we can really measure what they have learned over time, formatively or summatively. Let's take a look at another body of research that can kind of help us understand how we can step into the lives of our students to really teach them in a certain way that has cultural implications to really move them forward. There's another body of research. It talks about centering the student life experience as a central authority in the learning environment. And that when you do that as a practitioner, you're going to increase student metacognition and scholastic performance. It's going to increase student metacognition and scholastic performance. Again, that article talks about centering student lived experiences, what they know, what they come to school with, how they see the world. Hey, let's take a break, and I'll be right back with you right after this.
In a world so full of color, why would I choose to be colorblind? With all the blue in the sky and the green in my eyes and the orange of a monarch butterfly, why would I choose to be colorblind? See, so many teachers have said to me, in an effort to promote inclusivity, I don't see color. An otherwise harmless statement, but when it comes to race, it's not quite the same as you think. What you mean is that you love all of your students equally. All the students you have the capacity to serve, but in actuality, your students are not all treated equally, and they're also different colors. The last thing you want to do when it comes to race is erase the things that make us unique, erase a piece of what we see staring back at us. It's not about not seeing color. It's not about negating it. It's about celebrating it and raising the voices of Black authors, Black activists, Black leaders, Black heritage, Black existence, but resisting the single narrative. Resisting the story that Africa is one big territory with nothing but huts and famine. It's examining our own biases, our own prejudices, and accepting that you are not immune to making mistakes. So make them. Then take them as an opportunity to learn, because isn't that what we're here to do? Isn't that the spirit we're fostering? It's exhausting being young and Black in the country we're living in. Your students are exhausted, but not giving in. When it's been 400 years, you learn to cope. So I hope you take their hands and make an effort to understand and see color. Then read about it. Go to BSU meetings, be about it, meaning roll up your sleeves and apply what you're learning. Don't rely on the one Black student in your class to carry their entire community on their backs. Don't ask them to preach, but allow them to speak their truth if they so choose, and use their name. Even if it's hard to pronounce, announce your allyship. Wave it like a flag across the room. You have the opportunity to make your space a safe one. So take it and name racism when you see it. It's not teasing, it's feeding the beast of white supremacy. So seize the moment to dismantle the hate and educate. It's what you do best. Address the uncomfortable. Lean into what is difficult to talk about, because it all starts with conversations, hard ones. We must talk about redlining, talk about healthcare inequalities, talk about employment disparities, talk about hair and how all hair types are professional. Racism is not conceptual, it is real and it is perpetual. It is not political, but it is critical that you use your audience to promote tolerance. Talk about it. Read about it and be about it. See color, then use it to paint a better future for your students.
Again, that article talks about centering student lived experiences. It's called the validation theory, right? The validation theory, the theory of validation. And it's so incredible because in order for our students to feel free to express themselves, the validation theory suggests that practitioners model what they want their students to do, right? So as a multicultural student, or as a multicultural teacher, wherever you're from, it's incumbent upon you to provide opportunity and space for you to share your narrative of how you arrived at where you are, right? How you fare and how your perspectives have changed in reference to a topic in a text or learning, right? What did you do when you were in my situation, right? How did that look for you? Now you're validating your experiences, but in tandem, you're giving your students the opportunity to do the same thing, because you're modeling what you want to see. Because what you're saying is, as you see life and as you learn through a certain lens or perspective. And that perspective and that lens is valuable because it changes how you think over time. But it also offers the ability and the opportunity for you to share your perspective so that the whole of the group can be changed. Right? Because now I understand how you see it. Now I can draw lines of empathy. Now I can understand how you look at it. Now I can draw lines of understanding. And really and truly, the entire the classroom environment becomes the teacher, right? And as a teacher, you become the facilitator of this learning, this robust learning and sharing environment. But you have to do that, according to the validation theory, you have to model what you want your students to do. Right? If you want to see them do this, you have to model validating who you are culturally and your ability. You have to model that. You have to see yourself, acknowledge who you are, right? And talk about that, because not everyone has a perfect life. Not everyone's life is a crystal stair, and you've had some ebbs and flows, and you have perspective. You have perspective. But having that open, honest, and transparent moment with your students will allow them, or will encourage them to do the same and to validate their living experiences based off of where they are. And that's critical to the validation theory, right? So in understanding how our Black and brown students work, and understanding that we can kind of give them power to see themselves metacognitively. And then we understand what that word means. Metacognition is understanding how one understands, or knowing how one knows, or knowing how one learns, right? So being able to identify how you do certain things, right? And being okay with that, how you process material, how you display mastery. We give students the opportunity to wax and to build that muscle of metacognition where they can know, this is how I learn. And if I understand how I learn, I can duplicate and replicate this in multiple streams of understanding in educational settings, so that now I know how to learn. I can learn anything, anywhere, at any given time, because I have the tools to identify how I need to learn and how to display what I learn. And it's expressive and it's appreciated because my teacher showed me what it looks like. And we have to do that as practitioners. But we first have to validate ourselves and then give space for our students to validate themselves, right? Because every experience is valuable. Another body of research talks about how it addresses the notion that strong, culturally relevant materials found in the classrooms are direct indicators of wholesome learning and instruction, right? It talks about how that the proper assessment of student literacy mastery must include multicultural implications of content readability, range of questions, assessment activities, and fluency-centered dialect analysis. I want to give you a brief example of what that may look like because it's extremely important. There's one study where a teacher measured the fluency of a subset of students. Some of those students in that measuring, or if they took that assessment, they're from the Caribbean islands, right? So the fluency assessment, how to pronounce, to enunciate words, how to pronounce words, how fast you read, at your level of understanding, all that good stuff, right? So bam, miscues up the wazoo. Can't do this, nothing, no, incorrect. And that practitioner failed to identify that cultural implication that students from the Caribbean, they may pronounce words differently, but they understand it and they can tell you what the definition is and they can use it properly in proper syntax, but they just say it differently, right? So we have to be aware of that and not to initiate miscues because we're not aware of multicultural implications of diverse students. We just have to become well-rounded on what that looks like. Another body of research has a strong connection that establishes that multicultural students subscribe to the hip-hop genre as one of the most identifiable forms of music, culture, and entertainment. This research by my guy Chris Edmonds also concludes that in establishing hip-hop as a viable conduit of curriculum, practitioners will in tandem provide additional multidisciplinary instruction of science, history, mathematics, and literature. This article, and I'm going to share this with you, intends to provide exciting, culturally responsive insights to increase student enthusiasm to learn and authentically display grade-level content mastery. What this is simply saying is when we step into the lives of our students and we build relationship first, they will tell us how they think. They're going to show us what they appreciate. And once we find out what gets their motor going, we should stay in that lane. I was watching something the other night, and I love my wife, so I'm always trying to find out ways that I can better serve her as a husband. And Deion Sanders said something real smooth. He was like, listen, man, you gotta listen to your wife, because she'll tell you what she wants, tell you what she wants. If she put her hands on your shoulder, you take your hand, you put her hands on her shoulder. Yeah, because she's going to tell you. So she'll show you what she wants. And the thing is, with our students, they'll show you what they like. But we have to listen. And we have to identify it. And we have to acknowledge it and appreciate it. Once we understand what gets their motor going, stay in that vein. And now you take content, you take grade level curriculum and what they like, and you mush it together. And now we have a robust, comprehensive learning experience that students are excited to show multi-mastery. They're excited to be a part of that environment, but we have to create that space. We got to be good enough to see what they want, see what they like, and marriage content and standards-based curriculum together to really create that robust learning environment. We're going to take a second. I want to introduce you guys to the group of young men who I've come to love, honor, and respect. This group of young men, we call them the BLX, or Bold Leadership Excelsum. It's a group of young men who pride themselves in attaining and granting equal access for their members and communities. They're a band of eternal brothers standing in solidarity in order to create a communal dynasty of social, academic, and spiritual excellence in support of what's right and just. Ladies and gentlemen, this is BLX.
We have decided we're the young men of BLX. We are success bound in every way. We excel at whatever we do, not because we say it, but because we work hard. We decided not to fail because it's not considered. We're committed to go get it. We make no excuses why we can't, because we decided that we want to do. We decided to be trustworthy, honest, and integrous. We respect our elders as forerunners who labored for our well-being. We honor who we are for its foundation and heritage of our excellence. We're responsible for our families, communities, and brotherhood. The decision has been made. We will uphold our brothers. We We'll stand for what is right and just. We'll keep the faith in dark times. We'll lead the way as brothers of BLX.
I'll go through the fire. I'll go through the fire for you. It don't even matter what it requires. I'll go through.
Dr. Janice Hale and all of the subsequent research, it really just points to identifying how diverse students learn and express mastery, right? How they learn and express mastery. Because oftentimes, if you allow your multicultural students to show you what they have learned in your classroom, the way they see it in their head, you'll find out that they know a lot more than you expected them to know. They know a lot more. But you have to create that space. It can't just be one modality of assessment. I said it before at World Palm Beach High School, we're trying to teach the whole of the student. So you have to create that voice, right? Create a platform for your student to have that voice. And once they do that, they'll show you, I know it. Let me show you, but let me show you my way, right? And when they show you their own particular way, oftentimes, and this has come from Dr. Shields, a body of research that says, when you allow students to express content mastery the way they're comfortable with, they oftentimes surprise you. They know a lot more. Create that space. So again, it's talking about identifying how diverse students learn and express mastery, and then teach from that space of understanding. Right? So here's the takeaways, and we'll close this thing out, right? Here's the takeaways. Instruction must be standards-based. We know that. Got it. Stick with the standard. Understood. Duh. Got it, right? But more importantly, instruction must be directly purposeful, direct. It must have direct and tangible purpose that's exclusive to the student. It has to make personal sense. It has to make personal sense, right? So when you do that, when you make it personal to them, they remember it. My senior year at Bethune-Cookman University, at one point in time it was Bethune-Cookman College, right? BCC, right? So I was there, and it's a short African man named Dr. Edmondson Asgill, and I'll never forget it. I don't think it was my senior year. It was one of those years, right? So here I am. I'm in the classroom, and I come in, hot shot from West Palm. I go into the classroom. I've written a paper project, and he comes in. He read it already. He says, "Gilbert, what is this? Gilbert, what is this?" I'm like, "It's my project, doc." Right? So I'm thinking that everything is fine. What is this? What is this? It says my project. He takes my project, and he rips it up right in front of my face. Do it again. Now, of course, in my mind, my West Palm, I think I transformed in my head space. I kept a wise mind, but I saw myself throwing a little man out the window, right? But the thing is, when he did that, it arrested me. I'm like, whew, wow. Okay, so of course I picked some of the paper. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, read this. Read this. What are you trying to say? I said, da da da, and I just read the paper again. He says, what are you trying to say? So I read, I said, Doc, it says it right here. He says, no. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say? I said, Doc, it says right here. He said, no, Gilbert, what are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say, da 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 da. He says, what you're trying to say, that's what you should say. Now, guys, I'm 38, and I still remember that to this moment. It became personal because just that tool was pervasive. I took that tool, and it became a personal mantra for me that out of all my writing, out of all of my submitting, whatever I offer, it needs to be authentic in it should have my intention written all over. It should be plain and simple, right? It needs to, what am I trying to say? Whatever I'm trying to say, I'll say that. Now, how does that translate now? Because now in my classroom, my reading students, my English students, when they write something, oftentimes they're trying to use elaborate, elevated language. And I'm asking them the question, what are you trying to say? Oh, I'm trying to say that. No. But what are you trying to say to me? And they always, I'm telling you 99.9%, 100% of the time, they say, well, I'm trying to say da-da-da-da. I say, hey, whatever you're trying to say that, right? And they get it, like, oh, well, yeah, why wouldn't I do that? And I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't you do that? Yeah, whatever you're trying to say, just say that. And it sounds so much better, right? It's clear, it's concise, it's to the point. So whatever you're trying to say, and that's what we're talking about. Like, he needed to say those words to me. He had to rip that up in front of me. He had to say, do it again. He had to ask me, what are you trying to say? But that was a cultural implication. I, coming from an alpha male family, I needed to be arrested. He saw me for who I was, and he stepped in that space, and he did what he had to do because he knew for me, I needed to be transformed in a brazen way, like, no, this is it. Now, other students, he may say, okay, Rebecca, you want to just try it again? Or, Rebecca, this is trash. Get it out of here. And you'll see that Rebecca brings something back, and it's the bomb. It's like, oh, this is not okay. Oh, this is good, right? But you have to step into the lives of your students to find out what makes them tick, right? So it's relationship first. We have the responsibility of building relationship first. And then we can teach them from those implications of what we know, and then we could assess their student mastery on what we know of them, right? So from that space, so again, instruction must be standards-based. Number two, instruction must be directly purposeful, exclusive to the student. And number three, instruction must provide space for the multi-expressive display of student mastery. Students are going to show you what they know and how they can do certain things if you allow them to do it. Once we step into the space of our students' lives, we'll then become masters of curriculum, of content, and connection. Masters of curriculum, content, and connection. And that makes us the true sage on stage. I'm going to take any more time that you guys have, but please, I'm going to put my information inside the chat, inside the description. So by all means, please reach out to me. Let's sharpen each other. I don't know you, but I want to get to know you. And I think we can do that if we just kind of just connect together. So I love, honor, respect you. Shout out to everyone's here. Guys, let's go in grace into different spaces, right? Stand strong, stand firm, be elect. You guys take care.